Hello, and welcome to episode 14 of Expertise is Overrated, the podcast that takes the time to answer the questions you didn't know you didn't want the answer to. I'm Vib.
And I'm Sean, and neither of us has any clue what we're talking about. Now, before we award tinfoil for last week's episode, we'd like to welcome Ellie to the show. Hello, Ellie.
Hello.
Hi.
This is very exciting. You're our first ever guest.
I think
no one
mainly,
can ever take that away from you now.
No, I think it's mainly because I sent in a lot of cross texts.
Yes, no, if any...
that helped, yes.
For a friend of the show and frequent contributor to our feedback section, Ellie.
I would like to point out, I know you. I haven't got so obsessed that I've tracked you down.
I think that was a much better theory. I've never met this woman before in my life.
As far as I'm aware, you just somehow managed to worm your way into this one.
Just sneakily.
No, we're of course very happy to have you, and especially for an episode that you and I have discussed offline many a time. So, yeah, it's going to be good. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a great one. It's a great topic. It's great that I can argue against two people for a change, and it'll be a real challenge for once.
Yeah, I do feel like Sean's brought me in as backup more than anything.
He needs it. He really does.
This is not going the way I expected.
Isn't it?
Dear.
Now, okay, let's briefly talk about tinfoil for last week's episode. Now, as a reminder, this is an award that we give out at the start of each episode to the person who had the most ridiculous point in last week's episode. Sean?
Yeah, I mean, this one should be pretty obvious to anyone.
Again, hasn't it?
Yeah, you're getting it again because you just keep being stupid. You spent, I think, wasted 10 minutes of everyone's time last week continually asserting that there were only 3 gods of chaos and that Nurgle was not a god of chaos and was some sort of god of life thing. It was ridiculous.
I mean, as people say, the line between genius and just
being wrong,
moronic is a very fine one. All I can say is I get a lot of comments every week from people saying, come on, help Sean out a little bit. He's embarrassing himself. So I come up with more and more outrageous things to say every episode.
I don't understand how you've got tinfoil and yet it's still about me.
Because that's just how it rolls on this show.
So unfair.
No, it was, I was trying something, it didn't work. Let's just move on with our lives.
Okay, let's move on. We don't have much feedback for this episode. Mostly because this entire episode is basically feedback for our earlier Why Do Wizards Hide from Muggles in Harry Potter episode. And Ellie, as the person who sent the most feedback on that episode, I think compared to everyone else in total, do you want to just share briefly with us where we went wrong? Or maybe where I went wrong?
I mean, we didn't go wrong, but go on.
I mean, you did, absolutely. Because I think Sean already covered the whole I was cross with Vib, but I was disappointed with Sean, which I think is worse. I feel like you didn't really kind of tap into the idea of A, Muggle technology, B, the damage someone could do with a bloody sniper rifle just perched on a hill. Also drones. You can just do so much with drones, and you can't mind control a drone, but I might be able to tie that into this later, so I shall save some of that.
I think we should. I mean, there's a lot of interesting points there. They're all wrong, mind you. But yeah, go on.
No, I will say, Sean, you properly did me dirty though. With all the feedback I gave, the one you kind of put forward as my argument was the one about if you're having an actual face-to-face duel, one person with a gun, one person with a wand, and you seem to think I don't understand the concept of a trigger finger. I know I'm English, but I do know how
I quoted you word for word. That for the listeners' benefit, the quote was, "If you're having a duel, both people have guns, but one person has to shout bang first."
Yeah, and because I use that as a shorthand. So, in terms of twitch your finger, and then also say Avada Kedavra or the pronunciation. And you have to enunciate, otherwise, you can't just.
You absolutely don't. Only OWL level wizards have to do that sort of nonsense. The others just speak at the speed of thought.
How do you speak at the speed of thought without slur? Sylvester Stallone's never going to be a good wizard because he doesn't enunciate. You know that
No, but
one of the.
I mean,
are
you
you
can't
are you
argue
telling me
with
that
that.
Dumbledore can't just draw his wand and instantly cast? Well, I'm not sure he would ever cast Avada Kedavra, but something equally potent. I think a very potent wizard would speak the words in his head as they're taught to do at the later years in Hogwarts,
Yeah, but
and kill you before you've even drawn your gun.
I don't know, because you've still got to get the wand out of the holster, and wands involve elaborate movements, even if like you don't have to say the words, which I think most wizards do.
This comes back to the we're already veering into
Wildly off topic.
uncharted territory, but this comes back to what we were talking about in that episode, doesn't it? Like, we're faced so often with the absolute cream of the wizarding crop, right? We see Dumbledore, we see Voldemort, we see Harry, Ron, Hermione, Neville, right? These are incredibly potent wizards. We don't see Joe Blogg's wizard who's just wandering down the street and, as I put it, uses his wand to cut potatoes.
No, but at the same time, if you're going to have a Muggle versus wizard duel, you're not going to put, me as the Muggle who's never drawn a gun in his life.
Can we, please?
Well, but then if I win, it's going to be really embarrassing for everyone, isn't it?
But I mean, that's the thing. You can't pitch like your everyday Muggle against like Lord Voldemort. What if Lord Voldemort had to face off against a team of SAS snipers? Like,
I think it'd be quite easy because I think
I think I covered this, and he's just fucking dead.
He's fucking dead if he doesn't know they're there, perhaps. But then I don't see Voldemort just casually strolling around some sort of easily vantaged position, if that's even a word.
But you just track him.
Predator drone on the Malfoy Manor. Easy.
You just do it Russian. You just do it Russian style, and we'll just tag him with some polonium.
Yes, and what, you're going to just hand Lord Voldemort some polonium, are you, in his tea?
Sure, I'll tell him it's some sort of Hogwarts founder artifact.
And he's going to let you, a common Muggle, into his sight.
We'll dart him like the animal he is.
I think that brings us nicely on to the reason we're here today.
Indeed.
Which is we
rant
touched
about
on
Harry Potter. No,
a rant about Harry Potter, of course. But Ellie, I think this one's really yours. So, is the Ministry of Magic an insurgency?
Yes.
Thank you for
listening to.
No, I will elaborate slightly. Not that I think you're going to need much convincing, as they're just absolute bastards, really. But I think the best way to start is in the manner of a truly terrible wedding speech, which is to use the dictionary definition of what is an insurgency.
Oh, amazing.
Which is apparently an active revolt or uprising. And then Google also offered the pursuit of a political goal by means of organized violence. And so I think it's almost too easy if you look at the Ministry of Magic when it fell under, and I do not know how you pronounce his name, but Thickness,
I think.
Pious
Thickness.
But like our dear old mate Pious, because they were actively a hostile government. Well, I say government in inverted commas. But I think before we kind of touch on the nightmare was the nightmare of the idea of how quickly the Ministry of Magic actually fell. You kind of have to look at just how the Ministry of Magic on a good day, treat the idea of Muggles and like our government and basic laws. And so
I think you're absolutely right. I think jumping straight to the Ministry of Magic at its worst under Voldemort is probably just playing on easy mode.
Yeah, so I think
it is, but it's equally cheating, right? Because I don't think you need necessarily the institution of a Ministry of Magic for making that situation particularly bad for Muggles anyway.
Yeah, so I just think the entire institution, like even under Fudge and whatnot, they just I'm already jumping out of order of my notes, but like the fact that it's like the Minister of Magic, he's not called himself the Prime Minister. They're trying to hide under the sort of cloak of being like part of like the government, in the sense that they're not saying like, oh, we're the prime minister. They're sort of masquerading under the idea that, you know, they're in the cabinet, but they are most definitely not in whichever government's cabinet, because they're not appointed by the prime minister. He can't fire them. They're essentially just some sort of like little parasitic nature that sort of potentially turns up in the prime minister's office and says like, hi, basically I'm in charge, you don't know what's happening, and I'll just tell you what's happening when I feel like it. It's just quite rude.
See, but the counter argument to that is, right, that insofar as we do elect our MPs, we don't elect our cabinet. Whereas if you're a wizard, you genuinely do elect your minister.
I think that's absolutely unsubstantiated by the text.
All right, go on.
No, that's it. We have no idea how the Minister of Magic is
they're elected. I think it's mentioned repeatedly.
No,
like, certainly Scrimgeour's elected.
I don't think that they are, because we're repeatedly told Dumbledore was offered the position of Minister of Magic and turned it down. You can't...
Yeah, I've always interpreted that as a sort of, we'll let you run unopposed.
I don't...
That's almost worse, isn't it? Like, they're happy to fix
Who's
elections.
we, though? We never hear about wizard elections. I
need to look this up now.
Yeah, because they don't go, oh, Harry, you're 17 now.
Yeah,
congratulations, you're of age. Also, this is how voting works.
The trace is off. Also, how would you feel about voting for Percy Weasley for Minister of Magic?
Oh, God, why'd you have to go straight for Percy?
I don't know. I feel like he's poised.
He's probably got hidden depths.
Very hidden. No, but there's wider problems, I think, than who elects or appoints or chooses the Minister of Magic. It's what power they exercise when they're in that post.
Which is essentially all of it. Like
exactly.
They boss around. So essentially, if you look at the Minister of Magic, they can turn up in the Prime Minister's office at any point in time, like without invitation, without going through the front door. Mm-hmm. And also, they interfere in international relations to do so, which we have textual evidence of. Because when the Prime Minister at the time, in I think the 6th book, this will be the chapter that Viv mentioned he read to sort of frantically brush up on. When the Prime Minister says, "Oh, I'm expecting a call from a sort of different head of state," they just sort of hand wave that and say, "Oh no, don't worry, we can rearrange that. We can make him forget that he has to call you." And you're like, so you're quite happy to just not dabble, that's far too mild a word. Essentially take an overt hostile action against not only
I think
UK...
it's worse than that, actually, because I'm pretty sure what they say is, we will rearrange that. He will call you tomorrow evening.
Yeah, it's horrific. The idea that
but is it? I mean, a patriot would argue, well, you know, they're just prioritizing domestic affairs over international.
But to be so cavalier, that's such a thin argument, and you know it. To be so cavalier about the idea of changing someone's memory, like...
So I think this is really, really nasty if you stop and think about it. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was going to say I've already gone way off piece, but like I think we have the same point because we've definitely discussed it before.
No, but before I think either of you get to that, I want to just back up my patriotic argument here.
Okay.
Right? And I will quote from a certain Joanne K. Rowling. The Minister for Magic is democratically elected, although there have been times of crisis in which the post has simply been offered to an individual without a public vote.
Is this in the 7 published books?
No, but this is written
from
J.K. Rowling, who wrote the 7 published books. But all I want to say in terms of that is, I think if you have a cabinet, quote-unquote, perhaps, minister, who comes to you and says, we have a genuine, massive national crisis that that risks the lives of many of our citizens, perhaps you should postpone your call with some random foreign dignitary. There's an argument to be made for that being a good thing, no?
No, that I think is okay. There are several issues with it. One, I'm not having J.K. Rowling put it in a tweet so it's canon, because J.K.
No, she wrote an article on Pottermore, which I know is your favourite website in the world.
She also wrote on Pottermore that wizards shit themselves and then use the vanishing spell to make it go away. So I'm not fucking having it.
No, come on, let's be real. You've had that thought and considered it.
No, I haven't.
To be fair, I think before
You
we
will
end up in a
soon, let me tell you.
horrible conversation about the toilet habits of wizards, I think it doesn't matter if the wizards vote in their minister, because essentially it's like me suddenly getting like 4 of my friends together and having a vote and saying, "Oh, I'm the minister of hairdos." And, there's a national crisis that mullets are coming back. So sorry, Boris, I've rearranged all your meetings because we really must have this chat.
No,
Like,
no, but I'm glad you mentioned that, because you've taken it's a very good point, but you've taken it to absurdity, I think. Like, take the current healthcare crisis that we have right now. Would you not argue that there's maybe a point to be made for people in the know, experts, scientists, medics, nurses, etc., to say perhaps we should decide who is the best team to lead this, tricky situation, and let them kind of sort it out from there, as opposed to
No.
having Boris Johnson say, "Well, here's my health secretary, who turned out to be an absolute twat." Lead the country through a pandemic.
he had a
I'm
lot
glad
of
we're
things on
not a
his
political
mind.
podcast.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, this would get heated. No, you're
Our
absolutely.
last tweet would suggest that.
But so if you had suddenly like a little cabal of doctors just got together and said, we've nominated, we've called him, like, I don't know, he's called Steve, and he's health secretary number 2 who doesn't grope people in corridors. They're going to think of a punchier title soon. And, he's just going to crawl through Boris Johnson's fireplace because we found building plans or whatever, and rearrange all his meetings. It doesn't matter if you essentially get together and elect someone. You have to kind of have authority. I feel like I could come
Yeah,
to
the
such
question is,
person.
where do they derive their authority from?
But I'm glad you mentioned that, because authority is, I think that's the big thing, right? And the fact of the matter is, based on the 7 books that we have, we don't know the sort of the remit of all of this. What we do know is that Fudge, when he interacts with the Prime Minister in the start of Half-Blood Prince, he does mention a rule book which his government officials or his ministry officials tell him about, which to me at least suggests there may at one point have been some form of formal arrangement that was written down between muggles and wizards in terms of how governance works.
I don't know, because given the way Fudge speaks and the fact that he's an absolute patronising little shit, considering he's
But he's
Fudge
also
and
an
he's
idiot.
useless. Yeah, could you imagine being patronised by someone that thick? To be fair, whoever the Prime
I
Minister
mean,
was.
have you been watching the Prime?
Exactly.
I know, but like it's testament to him that he didn't try and staple something to Fudge, to be quite honest.
It could very easily have been the interaction between, one of the government officials we have right now and the Prime Minister.
But essentially, I just think it's really the way that Fudge speaks to the Prime Minister is deeply patronising, and the fact that he informs him of events. Like, granted, the first time the guy's like a bit, out of sorts because someone's just crawled out of his fireplace, and you're probably really having deep concerns about security issues, and also a portrait's talking to him, which is another security issue because it can literally spy on all his meetings. I'm jumping around, but yeah, when it comes to like Voldemort coming back and all that, essentially there's like mass murdering, like there's events of mass murder. Like I think a bridge comes down, Dementors are on the loose, and they tell him like weeks after, like at the end of the week.
If we look at the events that cause Fudge to visit the Prime Minister, now from memory, it's the escape of Sirius Black.
That's the first one, yeah.
Yeah.
The Triwizard Tournament.
That was an afterthought, actually.
Yeah, it's I'm bringing a dragon, by the way.
Yeah.
No. So what's the event? Is it actually Black's no big deal?
So I think essentially,
what was it?
He
Because
says
it's something related to it. Must be Black's
there's
back.
another
No. He
flashback.
comes to tell them about an incident, the Quidditch World Cup, in which Muggles were involved.
Okay, so it's
and then he also says, "Oh, by the way, we're importing 3 dragons and a
Black's
sphinx."
back. A terrorist attack, and we're importing dragons, and then
Another mass breakout
a
from
bigger
Azkaban.
terrorist threat.
See, and the dragons is the one where he mentions that there is a rule book, which one of his,
and the rule book says,
people says,
"I have to tell you.
you have to tell,
I have to tell you that I'm importing dragons." Like,
but also,
by what right does Fudge import dangerous creatures onto British shores?
Exactly. This is the thing. He's still a UK citizen. Because if he's not
Well,
a
is
UK
he,
citizen,
though? That's
assume-
a big
because
question,
otherwise
yeah.
they're an occupying force.
He
Because
has
the
to be a
Queen
British
owns all.
citizen.
I think the Queen owns all the land in the country. That's always been my
Yeah, but no,
understanding.
okay, but this is a really interesting point as well, right? Because is any wizarding territory actually on UK soil?
Yeah,
Because they're known to magically expand various weird places, so it could technically be somewhere completely different. It just happens to be accessed through a London
So
pub.
so Hogwarts, for example, is a school on British soil.
No, it's a school in Scotland, located somewhere in Scotland.
which
The entrance is in Scotland.
interestingly, Scotland has the right to roam. You, as a Muggle, you should be allowed to go anywhere in Scotland. That's my understanding. Sean can correct me on
That's
this.
a really good point. Yeah, they do. You can't close off land in Scotland. There's no such thing as rights of way in Scotland.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
they haven't closed off any land in Scotland.
They have.
You just can't get close because you'll realize you're in danger, or
But it's like in the
you
sense
remember
that
something.
if I have a path that runs along the back of my garden, God knows why, but if I do, that's a public right of way, I can't be like, oh, it's fine, I've just filled my field full of really angry bulls, or like, I don't know, put spike traps. You can't be like, well, I've not technically stopped people coming in. It's just if they come in, they're going to get eaten by a wolf. Like, the law doesn't like you to play silly buggers, and essentially Hogwarts is them playing silly buggers. That's a professional legal term.
It is.
Well, that's not really explained ever, is it? Because I think we mentioned this previously, is that when a Muggle looks at Hogwarts, they just see a ruin that says, condemned, don't go in, danger. But it's never really explained what would happen if a Muggle just decided to go in. Maybe they just explore a ruin and the wizards just see like, oh, what's this Muggle doing here?
Never mind that. Hogwarts is an educational establishment in the British Isles. It's under the remit of the Care Commission.
No, but you're assuming it's in the British Isles. It's in a magically, created space.
No, it's not.
Okay, Vib, if we take your argument to the extreme, which is that somehow wizards, the UK wizards, British wizards, fall under they fall under a separate nationality within
passport control.
Yeah, they are absolutely not there are no borders, and especially given the fact that they don't seem to have any. Well, you know that borders are an issue right now. They're a hot topic. Essentially, they will willy-nilly let international wizards in and out. So if they aren't part of the UK, I mean, it's still an issue.
Yeah, perhaps that's just an argument for wizards being much more internationally cooperative than actual Muggles.
There is a strong argument for that, I think, but that's
wizard
not the question
law,
in front of us.
Wizard law cannot override UK law. When they were organising the Quidditch World Cup, there is no way in hell they did a risk assessment, which will be required under UK law, which they won't have done, because the Muggle Prime Minister was not informed beforehand, nor was the Department of, I don't know what the UK department is, but the sports people in the government. Did anyone tell Gary Lineker?
I was going to say no one told Seb Coe, but yeah, Gary Lineker.
Gary Lineker wasn't allowed to be a pundit, so therefore...
Either Gary or Seb needed to be kept in the loop, and neither were.
No, but I do imagine that the Department for Magical Sports would have performed their various risk assessments.
What, led by Ludo Bagman? Yeah,
I don't think Ludo Bagman. Again, is it any worse than Boris Johnson?
No, I think Ludo Bagman is just a Boris Johnson insert.
An athletic Boris Johnson, once upon a time.
Also, I'm trying to think...
You saw him absolutely nail that 8-year-old kid playing rugby.
That's very true, actually.
I feel like Ludo Bagman probably falls foul of the Bribery Act or something. He's got some funny things happening.
He definitely does, 100%.
So he's like... That's
Harry
the thing.
Potter... Sorry, go ahead, Ellie.
Oh no, this is me just being like, none of them follow UK laws. They think they're above it. They are UK citizens. I will die on that hill. Otherwise, also, they're kidnapping our children.
Harry Potter, at the very least, is a UK citizen.
Well.
Hermione Granger, 100%.
Hermione Granger, 100% is, yeah. But is Hermione Granger really the one you want to, build your case around, considering that she uses your favourite charm on her own parent?
No, we're coming on to that.
She is a war criminal, essentially.
I mentioned it earlier, I think. Obliviate, I venture, is the single most terrifying spell in the Harry Potter universe.
Oh, absolutely.
Hands down.
And
there is the Bat Bogey Hex, but yeah, Obliviate.
Okay, no, fair enough.
A short second.
Ginny Weasley's Bat Bogey Hex is giving
it's
it
fine.
a run
You
for
can
its
defeat
money.
that by having a very clean nose.
You certainly will at the end of it, for sure.
But yeah, it's quite concerning the fact that I was going to jump on Sean's point earlier as well, just in case anyone gets really frustrated being like, you never got to the point, which is frequent with me. But Yeah, it's concerning the fact that you have 3 unforgivable curses, and yet the idea of, saying, why not bump it up to 4 and saying mind wiping people is a
Yeah.
bad thing to do.
No, because apparently that's a government mandated
That's what's
thing, isn't
really
it? It's
scary.
crazy.
That's what's really scary. And they use it on muggles, right? This is
All the
where I
time.
think there's a real problem.
They have a department for it.
There's a department within the Department for Magical Law Enforcement, isn't it?
As a matter
Just
of
the
fact, I think they
Obliviators.
exclusively use it on muggles, don't they? The Obliviator squad, I think, is exclusively designed to make muggles forget wizards.
But we know that Gilderoy Lockhart uses
No,
Obliviate.
You can use it on a wizard, but I don't think the Ministry of Magic, at least, is
No,
ever
sorry.
to do it on wizards.
Sorry, no, I think you're right. I think we never see it used on wizards.
But it's quite it's quite interesting.
Illegitimately.
Yeah, the framing of Gilderoy Lockhart using it on wizards is obviously framed as a bad thing to do, whereas using it against muggles is, oh no, it's for their own good, the poor little lambs.
This is the really concerning paternalistic approach that wizards take to muggles that we spoke about last time as well. I think that's what gives rise to this idea that insurgency might not be the right word, but they're a sort of occupying force, or
what I think is really
shadow government or something.
Well, they're not a shadow government because they're not official. Like, anyone can call themselves a government. Essentially, they're the Amish run riot.
Okay, sure, you're working.
Well, no, in the sense that the Amish have their own courts, and I think you can, I'm really plumbing the depth of my knowledge of the Amish, which is mostly Springer, I don't know. There we go. We've plumbed the depths. But essentially, you have little isolated communities that do have their own sort of different kind of, I don't know, rigmaroles and the like. But the Amish can't supersede US law. And to kind of, I'm having to jump to the US because I can't think of any UK examples. But in the US, you do have the sort of like native governments, but they're done by treaties and the like. Whereas I just don't think the wizards have.
US law doesn't apply on reservations.
Yeah. Whereas,
but it's interesting in terms of UK wizards, right? Because I guess it's never made explicit that UK wizards aren't subject to UK law. It's just, what are you going to do? You're going to send some policemen out to try and arrest some wizards with your fire legs?
I know.
It's not going to happen, is it?
What are you saying?
No, they must be UK citizens, because you mentioned that the excellently named Theseus Scamander signs up with the British Army in World War I.
He signs up with like a wizard detachment, doesn't he? I mean, I got this horribly wrong last time, didn't I? Yeah. All I remember is the Owl Brigade, which was hilarious at the time and still is.
And Newt was involved in an attempt to wrangle dragons, but so either this is I tie myself in knots with this. Either Theseus was a member of the British Army, and at the time, Douglas Haig knew about wizards and had a wizard detachment that he sent on special missions, or the Ministry of Magic was at war with Germany. Which I don't.
But ultimately, though, because the Ministry for Magic decided that they would not participate in the war. So either they're sort of conscientious objectors, or
that's the thing. They fall under the idea of they report to the Prime Minister. The Department of Education couldn't suddenly turn around and say, we're not taking part in a war. I mean, I don't know what call there would be for them to go into it, but the Treasury can't just say, well, we're not part of the war, so we're not going to fund it. Soz, guys.
Yeah, I don't think they are subservient to the Prime Minister.
I see this more as a sort of almost like a UN type situation, right? Where they're just two different nations altogether, and just out of common courtesy, the wizards every now and then say, "Oh, by the way, guys, we're going to do this."
But they're
on our land.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure they would argue the same.
No,
but they're on their land.
So, for example, when wizards go to Platform 9 3/4, there is a period of time, even if we accept that Platform 9 3/4 is not in central London and is in some Ministry of Magic owned pocket dimension, there is a period of time during which wizards are on British soil And I ask again, by what right? What passports did they have to present? Are they a member of the EU? Like, how did they get into Britain? Unless they're UK citizens. And if they're UK citizens, then they're subject to UK laws.
Exactly.
Except they're not, because the wizards say, fuck that, we're doing what we want.
Yeah, but what laws do we see wizards break?
All of them.
Flying cars feels illegal. I'm not sure how, but it
There
feels
was
illegal.
literally an article in the BBC last week about the first ever flying car.
A flying
Not
Ford,
illegal, is it?
a flying Ford Anglia
Also-
feels illegal.
Also, the aforementioned not doing risk assessments and the like. Breaking
No,
laws
but
doesn't
that's an
always have.
assumption that you've made. We don't
Well-
know they didn't make any risk assessments.
It doesn't always have to be showy. The fact that they're mind controlling people, I feel like that.
No,
If
that
not-
is the big one.
Yeah, if not specifically, we haven't thought we need to have a law about it. You can definitely get it under one of them and sort of just make it fit.
You can make a case that that's grievous bodily harm.
To be fair,
But for all we know, if they've passed that law 100 times and it's been forgotten every time.
Also, guarantee like James I will have passed some sort of anti-witchcraft legislation, so their entire
Very
existence is a crime.
Very true.
Like, there is no way, because this is going to be one of those ones where it's just never been repealed because people are like, oh, we don't need it. Turns out we do. We really do.
No, the whole mind control is very worrying and special, because it's particularly the way that, because when they wipe the poor Muggle's memory, who's in charge of the field at the Quidditch World Cup, right?
Yeah.
Some guy just apparates right behind him, wipes his memory, and Arthur Weasley, Hermione, and Harry, particularly Harry and Hermione, who live in the Muggle world, they don't even think twice about it. They're like, oh yeah, it's cool, wipe that guy's memory, who cares? Let him get on with his life.
You can
Even
also
more
see that
worrying.
it's doing it's doing permanent damage.
Absolutely. Even more worryingly, they have a junior minister, one of the Death Eaters tries to put him under an Imperious curse,
Yes.
goes wrong, and he thinks he's a duck. And again, our Prime Minister wasn't told about this straight away. It was a sort of like, oh, the guy who's been a bit funny and started trying to strangle his family. Yeah, no, it turns out it's terrorists that tried to do that. Sorry, it's taken us a week to let you know we've been handling it. And you're just like, do you not think maybe for security reasons, people should be made aware that people are trying to control people's mind, and so maybe look out for strange behaviors and the like? Just a thought.
That's a fantastic point, because it's that, and not long after. I mean, obviously, as we've mentioned before, they clearly have people more or less in place all over the world to just be like, oh, cast a little, obliviate on said president or said prime minister at a minute's
How
notice.
creepy is that? Because essentially the implication behind that is we have people everywhere. They can get to anyone at any time. No one will believe you if you say this, and also if they do, we can just wipe your mind. Have a nice sleep. Like, it's sinister as shit.
It is, and then only moments later in book terms, they install Kingsley Shacklebolt as like the PM's personal aide.
Exactly, they've already installed him.
Yeah, it's quote, isn't it? About your new aide. Oh, Shacklebolt, you can't get rid of him. I really like him. Of course you do. He's one of ours. That's terrifying.
Also, how patronising is that? Well, of course you love him. He's a wizard. He's not one of your shitty lot, is he?
It's just awful. But I just the
think
deeper
of
you delve into wizards, it comes back to the conversation we had about St. Mungo's as well. Like, the existence of St. Mungo's is such a smack in the face.
They can cure cancer, and they don't.
Yeah, that's...
Well, we don't necessarily know that.
They can
I'm
try.
sure they can.
They can cure a lot. They could basically render A&E pointless.
The problem is, knowing wizards, they're not even aware of cancer, because they do seem to be stuck like 500-600 years behind us somehow.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just their natural protection. But ultimately, coming back to the original question, is the Ministry of Magic an insurgency? I don't think either of you have presented a solid case yet.
They are, though, right? If I dip into the Hague Convention briefly, which I definitely haven't read and have just choice-picked sound bites. But
It's all we ever do.
Yeah. Territory is considered occupied when it is actually placed under the authority of a hostile army, which is the Hague Convention, Article 49. Is that Article 49? It's an article. It's one of them. Google it. But essentially,
wizards don't have any standing armies, so...
No,
I'm sure
I would
Every
argue,
wizard is a standing
yeah,
army.
by
exactly.
your definition, but not by the Hague's definition.
Yeah, I think,
The
to be
Hague
fair,
doesn't have a definition because they keep getting obliviated.
Well, then my point still stands, doesn't it?
but they've definitely seized territory in the country that we can't access. See Hogwarts, see Diagon Alley, see, I don't know, various other like little wizarding enclaves.
Now,
There's
this is where I'm going to have to turn to my. I don't know if you're a lawyer, Ellie, but I know that at least one of us here
Oh no,
pretends
I'm
to be.
absolutely not a lawyer. Thank Christ.
If I occupy, say, a part of London and no one ever calls me on it, have I still occupied it?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, it depends what you mean by occupy, but like there will be a freeholder of that land who ultimately
Sure.
is the owner.
And how do you know who the freeholder is?
You check the land registry.
Exactly, and how far back in that date?
I mean, every piece of land in the United Kingdom is on the land registry.
Sure. And so
Essentially.
what if on those registries it says owned by Ministry for Magic?
Then you know what? Fair enough.
No, you know what? Then we're getting into some real sticky situations with anti-discrimination law. Because who are they letting in and why? Because they're not saying it's all muggles, but there's a very like need to know basis in the sense that Hermione Granger's parents can access Diagon Alley. So it's not that they're saying no muggles can come in, but essentially
But one assumes they can only access it with Hermione because they'd need Hermione's wand to get through the wall.
Yeah. So they have put up like an artificial gateway, which is based on characteristics that people can't control, which is the presence or absence of magic.
Sadly, I don't think the presence or absence of magic is a protected characteristic under the Equality Act.
Yet.
It should be.
Oh, yes.
It was going to be, and then the Obliviators came along.
Exactly. But fundamentally, this always goes back to, as we all know by now, my favourite argument of why the numbers don't make any sense. And I think we briefly touched on this.
Oh God, here we go again.
We did, right? Because we've mentioned Hermione's parents. That's already 2 muggles to 1 wizard. And then we've mentioned that quite a few wizards marry muggles. So a lot of muggles actually know about wizards. Well, yeah. But a lot of muggles know that wizards exist, and yet they still...
Add Obliviate to marriages, and everything becomes really uncomfortable really quickly.
Also,
you're just really worried that your wife has wiped your memory multiple times, aren't you?
No.
But essentially, it's just because imagine the situation if you married a wizard and then you have this sword. I don't doubt the ministry go around to visit them and impress upon them quite heavily. If you tell anyone about this, we can wipe the prime minister's memory. We can do this. We can do that. You know that they're going to come for you. You know that they think you're like less than nothing. Of course, you're
that's
not
just the
going to
magical
say anything.
equivalent of the Official Secrets Act. In which case, if you break it, they hang you.
They don't. I've signed it.
Well, now they're going to hang you.
Hung.
The sanction for breaking the Official Secrets Act is going to prison.
Can I please thank whoever's going to do the hanging for ridding me of this co-host?
The sanction for breaking the Official Secrets Act is going to prison. It's not being hung.
Well, some would say that having
hanged.
your memory wiped is just a mental prison.
Yes, but those people don't think about Obliviate properly.
Well, how could you? Because you never know what the hell it is.
That's right. I get fixated on it because the idea that you cut away a part of who someone is and that's completely fine is just so horrific. And I fundamentally don't think that J.K. Rowling appreciated quite how terrifying it was when she wrote it.
I think she did, right? Because she introduces that spell in the 2nd year. And then she spends many, many subsequent years being like, oh, but look at these curses. They're so very bad. Why don't we focus on the Imperius curse? Or, the Killing curse? Or the Cruciatus curse?
And you've just got Obliviate.
Please forget about Obliviate, yeah.
Do you think she looked at it and went, oh, shit?
Oh, shit.
Because I feel like
maybe the ministry is an insurgency. I should change this.
But because I feel like the question with Obliviate is like, even though if you took a memory away, would you still have a vague sense of unease? Like in the sense that you have, like, say if you got hit by a car, you might still sort of have like some sort of real deep gut feeling that.
So
like,
I think there's a massive question as to what happens when you take a memory away. Does it fill the gap, or are you just left with a hole?
Well, because if we think about, was it Slughorn when he tried to modify his own memory
He modified his own memory, yeah.
and it
When
jumped
I don't think he
round?
did though. He modified the memory that he gave away, which may be
Oh,
slightly
quite.
nuanced.
Oh,
Because he
yeah.
obviously
No,
had the real memory there, right? When he
But because
inevitably gave it away.
I don't
no,
think
you're
it's
right.
like, it's not going to be some slick operation like in Men in Black where they sort of give them like the flash and then they get like here's the kind of replacement thing. Because we've seen when they have repeated memory modification spells, they start to get really muddled really quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
And
this comes back to a sort of competency argument, as you guys were saying earlier. Not every wizard is a Dumbledore or even a Harry, or crucially a Hermione. Because I think we do find out when Hermione obliviates her parents, she somehow implants a memory that they are, dentists who live in Australia and have no kids.
Yeah,
and that seems to
happily
be a reality
childless
that
and
they take on.
have
Yeah.
a sudden desire to move to Australia. Yeah,
and to a point where no wizard will ever be able to, or certainly no muggle will ever be able to find out the truth there. I mean, maybe a wizard like Voldemort could with enough mental digging.
Well, yeah, because that's the other scary thing is that wizards are mind readers.
oh god,
Oh, come on. As Snape would say, that's way too simplistic. And
It's way too
foolish.
simplistic, but
The mind is not a book, Sean.
Oh, shut up! Yours is. It's a comic book.
I don't know if that's insulting or not. I really don't think it is.
It was meant to be, and then I realized it's probably not.
do you think they have like wizard Marie Kondos who are like I can't pronounce it, who are mind readers and essentially can go in and like organize your mind for you? Because that would be quite nice,
That would be quite useful.
like where they just make it
See,
tidy.
but this is where it gets, in my opinion, really very murky, right? Because sure, tampering with Muggle memories and so on is heinous. But even when it comes to wizards, it's not like legilimency or occlumency is a thing that's ever talked about, unless in very specific circumstances. Like, it's not taught. And you have essentially the headmaster of a school full of 11 to 17-year-old children who can just read everyone's mind by looking at them.
It's never quite clear to me exactly how legilimency works. Like, Snape casts a spell in order to be able to do it.
No, he does.
he?
He does in training. He does in training, but I think that's to make it really obvious.
Oh yeah,
There's
maybe.
certainly times in the books I think where he just, because he does that same thing that Dumbledore does, just more intensely, where he stares at Harry and he almost knows that Harry's lying. So I think that Snape does that.
He does it
Have we-
with Malfoy as well, doesn't he? We
Yeah.
overhear him using legilimency on Malfoy.
Have we essentially got to the root why Snape is actually such a grumpy bastard, which is that he just has to listen to horny teenage brains all day?
I think it's that
every
he
day?
listens to everyone in Hogwarts going, he's
Probably,
such a
yeah.
douche.
Probably.
But then why doesn't he just wash his hair? Like that's the thing. He knows, and now it's a grudge thing because everyone's like, "God, Snape's such a greasy bastard," and he's like, "I like being greasy. It means I can slip through pipes more easily, or whatever he's doing."
I could be the next heir of Slytherin.
Oh my god, do you think Snape larps as the Slytherin's monster?
Snack, I'm a snack.
I'm Snape.
Amazing. No, but I think Snape, because it does seem that Snape has to exert some sort of effort, and this is where it all gets really quirky, right? Because we talked about wizards are armed, etc., and wands and so on, but wizards like Dumbledore seemingly are just able to cast legilimency without doing anything. It's almost just like a thought. Same with that, it seems that he can cast like Homina Revelia when he walks into a room and he knows exactly where people are, to the point where he can fool, a Deathly Hallow, where he knows exactly that Ron and Harry are stood in the corner of Hagrid's cabin somehow. So I think that there's just level of again, magical power, where some people don't need wands, some people can just think and do things, whereas others like Snape need to articulate it more. And that's a level of knowledge that seems to be hidden even to wizards, let alone
Do you
muggles.
think, because I've just realised, I feel like the mind reading is the biggest wizarding problem we've got to overcome, because I feel like I've got solutions for all the others, but mind reading is actually the one that I'm like, oh shit.
I'd love to hear the solutions to all of them, actually.
I think,
Yeah,
I think the answer to...
But is it eye contact? Because if not, we could just do sunglasses.
No, eye contact is specifically for, I always mix up curses or jinxes, like what Quirrell does to Harry in first year. But he needs to have eye contact for some reason.
Yeah, but does Snape when he
Jinxing.
does
He's
mind?
jinxing the broom.
Yeah, because when Snape does reads people's minds, does he have to gaze into their eyes, or does it just help?
I
Because
think it just
I
helps.
think it just helps, yeah.
Because certainly Voldemort doesn't need to look into people's eyes, because when we are in his head and he's killing everyone from Gringotts, he basically rips out of their heads whether or not they knew about the cup and then kills them, doesn't he?
bugger.
Yeah.
Weirdly, do we think tinfoil might actually help?
Yes, we're on to something.
I mean,
Tinfoil for tinfoil, who'd have thought?
Yeah, that's absolutely.
but I'm just wondering, because I'm really cross now, because I'm like, damn it, I hadn't even thought of this as an issue. And now it means that we have to just avoid wizards, and we can only fight them from a distance. Otherwise, we give all our plans away. Unless, of course, we have to operate in cells. That's our only solution. No one can know the whole plan.
Maybe. I think maybe tinfoil glasses, but I think in
We're gonna
Goblet
look
of
dope.
Fire doesn't like baby mutant weird miscreant Voldemort read the Muggle's mind without even looking at him, because his
Yes.
Yeah, he
what is
pulls
that when
his
he's
neck,
turned
Frank,
around?
doesn't he?
He's
He pulls
facing
his-
the fire, and he reads Frank's
And he
mind.
still reads Frank's mind. So I think, again, if you're powerful, and this is the weird thing about all this universe, I think if you're powerful enough, you can more or less just do whatever you want.
The rules start to flex around Voldemort and Dumbledore in particular.
I guess as they should, perhaps.
To be fair, I think with enough safeguards in place, it doesn't matter if wizards know what we are actually doing, as long as we know they can't break through. Because
I think
actually,
it matters on a sort of philosophical level.
Oh, on a philosophical level.
If we're building a force to take them down,
And you guys are arguing they've already broken through because it's an insurgency.
No,
Well,
but
this is
yeah,
what I was going to come on to. I think insurgency might not, based on Ellie's definition from the very start, I'm not convinced insurgency is the right
So I'm
word.
glad you said it.
But
they're an occupying force, and we need to fight them back.
something.
But they're not, though, because they reveal themselves to the Prime Minister, and he does precisely fuck all about it.
Because he's afraid, which is why we need.
Nonsense.
What would happen if the Prime Minister said, fuck off out of our country? Thank you. Bye.
Well, then he will wake up the following morning thinking, what a great evening I had.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Or he wouldn't wake up at all. It's one or the other.
I'm also willing to bet that every single wizard, is breaking the law.
Absolutely. See, if I was Prime
Only the
Minister,
law they choose to abide by.
None of them pay tax to
Absolutely.
HMRC.
Or do they don't follow immigration rules, they don't follow.
But why would you
health
pay
and
tax if you
safety.
have no income?
They all have jobs.
Yeah, but none of them get paid money.
They
They
do
do.
Do you pay income tax on random trinkets?
No, but there is no.
They get paid in gold.
They get paid in kind, which has a value because the thing in which they get paid in kind has a transferable value into sterling.
Assuming they get paid to work, and it's not just a charitable donation that happens to occur every month.
That I don't think wizards work on charity.
Can I just for the record show that Sean didn't manage to say anything to that?
I feel
was
I think you've
waiting
actually
for
rendered
Ellie
him speechless.
waiting for Ellie to knock that low-hanging fruit away.
It feels like it's barely worth my time. But one thing that is kind of slightly changing the subject, but not really, is it's because it's more tied into my plan of how to get rid of wizards for once and for all, which mainly involves poisoning. But we don't have any wizard farmers. So they have to have a food source, and we are their food source because according to Gamp's law, they can't just magic up food.
True.
But they...
You could have worded that slightly less terrifyingly, though.
What do you mean in the sense?
We are a source of their food.
Yeah. Soylent Green.
We might be, and we might not even know.
It's true.
I never remember with Gamp's law. Can they... Because the annoying thing is they can conjure up drinks, right? So they can survive for a long time with just magic.
Yeah, so we can't go after their water supply. It has to be the food.
But I think they can also duplicate food, can't they?
I think they can.
create food.
They can't create it, but duplication, I think, is this weird exception, or have I got that wrong?
It may well be true. But
I
does something
swear.
weird happens with duplication, though?
Oh, is it the quality
Yeah,
starts to
true.
decline, so you can't just buy one chocolate bar and then
I think that's
sell
right.
like
Because
thousands?
it's the Geminio curse, or whatever it is, that they use to replicate the cup.
Yeah, but I think that's obviously a curse. I think that there's
Yeah,
probably better, less vicious duplication spells.
probably.
But I don't know. They just give me the ick, wizards, I think, is essentially, which I know is a
I think
terrible argument, but
no, I think that's completely fair. I think
they're creepy fuckers and they're like parasites that essentially, I will admit, I think they buy, well, I assume they buy the food off us, but for all we know, there's a poor muggle farmer who can't for the life of him balance his books.
yeah.
They
You
could be
can't just accept
stealing
that they fish plimpies and live off that, huh?
maybe they
Like old
house.
xenophilias.
Hang on, do they also, if we're talking about them like breaking the law, what about house elves, a sentient being kept as slaves? Pretty sure
Yeah,
that's
very
not
true.
legal.
Don't pay house elves.
But even wizards struggle with that, right?
No,
I
it's
mean,
true. don't,
Yeah, no,
don't even wizards struggle with that as if it's a good thing. One wizard
Look,
struggles
you're
with
backing me into a corner with my fellow kin here. I'm just trying to defend ourselves long enough for me to, send my colleagues over to obliviate the both of you.
yeah, me and Sean are going to wake up tomorrow going, we must remember to film the podcast this evening.
Yeah, we need to do that recording.
I'll just upload episode 15 and Sean will go, what happened to 14?
Yeah.
We don't speak about 14.
14 was great. What are you on about?
It's like Windows 9. It just never happened.
Maybe that was wizards as well. Just saying.
Maybe. But I think we're essentially agreeing that wizards are creepy, to say the very least.
Yeah, the specific terminology that you apply might differ from person to person. I think they're sort of too embedded to be realistically called an insurgency. They're some sort of shadow government or something like that. From my
Yeah, but this might rekindle the whole debate about the what's it called? Statute of Secrecy? No,
yeah,
something like that, right?
International Statute of Secrecy.
Yeah, that's the one. Where they hide because they essentially just don't want to have to deal with all this bullshit and therefore interact with muggles
But
as little as possible.
I can't live in the UK and say, "Oh, I don't want to deal with HMRC, so I'm not dealing with that bullshit," and continue to live my life.
But you don't have the tools to be able to actually avoid MHRC.
No, absolutely. But we don't live in a makes right society.
Yeah.
Except wizards do.
No, but by that logic, wizards are essentially sovereign citizens. You know, those people who like argue with the police
freemen of the
constantly.
land.
Exactly, yeah.
Deeply irritating members of society.
But good value. Good value to
Wizards.
sort of watch.
You wonder if MI5 every now and then has a sort of case file on a wizard. They're like, oh, this person's really suspicious, and then just disappears.
I do wonder whether there are a bit like. Have you ever read, Ellie? I think you have the Rivers of London series by Ben Aranovich. Because in that, some people sort of across the higher echelons of British society know about magic and the Fae and all of that, and just kind of run on a "don't bother us, we won't bother you" type agreement. And I wonder whether there's something a bit like that in Harry Potter. So, like you say, maybe there's a couple of people who've been at MI5 for 50 years who look at case files and go, "Yeah, we're never solving that one. Don't worry about it. It can go in that pile over there."
See, I'd argue that's the wrong. I think that's a good shout for the mentality, but I think that's the wrong mentality to think, because that's the sort of, in the olden days, as it were, wizards were something for muggles to fear. But I think nowadays, muggles are something they should fear us, because essentially they can't wipe our case files anymore because they're on computers. And I guarantee the wizards are going to just smash the computer monitor and call it job done. And you're just like, it's on the hard drive, mate.
Can't obliviate a computer.
They are, as I think we mentioned in our last.
Can't obliviate the
episode as well.
cloud.
Exactly, they are surprisingly technologically
incompetent,
inept. Yeah, like
I don't think it's particularly surprising if you think about it.
Well, because they can't.
Well, maybe that's just the image they're trying to portray.
Well, we invent technology to solve problems, right? We invented the steam engine because we needed a way to transport heavy things faster than horse and cart. basically. Wizards have that. They've got, they can just make shit fly. They don't need to invent steam engines. So their uptake of technology is predictably slower. The fact that they still use quills rather than biros makes no sense. But that's just because they're all a little bit... I think probably because Dumbledore is just quirky.
They revel in eccentricity.
They do revel in eccentricity. That's a really good way of putting it.
Because I think...
But what's weird is that I feel when Fudge comes to visit the Prime Minister, especially when Scrimgeour also comes in a bit later, you think, well, why are you here? Like, what's the point of informing the Muggles if you're not going to ask them for help? But perhaps think outside the box. They might actually be helpful, because no one's going to expect, the army to rock up the ship.
No one expects
this. Exactly.
It might just work.
Well, like that thing, what's Voldemort going to do with a tank? Because for all we know, like Tiger tanks...
Vanish it, probably.
Well,
I mean, he would easily beat an entire Muggle army, I think. But it's worth a try. Because they sort of leave it on this stupid thing as like, well, but don't you know magic? It's like, well, yeah, but the other side knows magic too. At which point the Prime Minister should have said, well, have you tried an army?
Yeah.
And a load of guns. Maybe
have you tried guns?
Well, because what I want to actually see is how Voldemort deals with the concept of mutually assured destruction, which is, great, wipe the Muggles out. Have you heard of something called nuclear weapons?
But isn't
because I swear to God, if you kill us, no, we'll just turn the island to glass.
Though, doesn't he? Because that Dumbledore is the wizarding equivalent of mutually assured destruction, isn't he?
No, I think nuking Britain is.
See, but the thing is, but then I don't think certainly a wizard like Voldemort wouldn't care, right? He's like, yeah, sure, nuke London, whatever that means. He'll just know that something's up. Probably put some really powerful protective enchantments around himself if he's even in the country. And then what?
I mean,
we've already said that if they can probably cure cancer, so the nuclear fallout's not going to bother a wizard. They'll just live in a nuclear wasteland for a while.
I just feel like Voldemort's not thought it through. Like, I do just think technology really could beat wizards. Because essentially a lot of the issues, like in terms of, again, it comes back to sniper rifles. Like, Voldemort can't beat a sniper rifle. Like, he's got his Horcruxes, but if every time he pops up you put a bullet in his head, he's going to get quite cross quite quickly.
But then I don't necessarily disagree that if you had the shot and he's just casually strolling around Oxford Street, maybe, but I just don't see that. He just pops up randomly, and then he's probably veiled or disillusioned.
Right, so because my theory
or even
on
invisible.
My theory on this is, if you take Hogwarts and the fact that we know electronics don't work there, we know there's a certain threshold where electronics go haywire around magic. So theoretically, we could start dealing with I was going to use Wigglier, less and less reliable technology in terms of we're looking for something that's designed to break in the presence of magic, and we can essentially lower that down to levels of such fine stress points that we can get it to break in the point of like a wizard of a certain threshold. So we'd be able to kind of fly drones all over the country, pinpoint areas of high magical activity, and then send some surface to air missiles to take out Malfoy Manor. Golden.
I think we call that modern day physics and looking for dark matter and energy.
That too.
Maybe when those physicists are successful, we will find Voldemort.
Yeah. I was basing it on anti-tip devices and shipping.
Oh wow, niche.
Where I don't know why. I think I watched a documentary on them once, which shows the excitement I have in my life over lockdown.
Well, we can all share in that, I think.
We've all done something like that. We've all done things we're not proud of during lockdown.
And some things we are very not proud of.
And you, dear listener, are listening to one of those.
Quite right. So
well, I think we can conclude.
Yeah.
Sorry, I think just stealing your thunder there.
No, go for it.
I was just going to say, I think we can conclude. All three of us are unhappy with the situation presented to us by the books. We might differ precisely on exactly how unhappy we are, depending on our grasp of things like ethics. But,
are you suggesting my need to bomb them to Kingdom Come is perhaps not the most moral choice?
I think in your own unique ways, you and Vib have both gone in quite interesting directions during the course of this episode.
I think so. So Ellie's approach is bomb them, worst case scenario, nuke them and us with it.
Well, I'm
Mine
just
is,
saying.
well, we can't see them anyway, so who cares? And then Sean is just here for, I don't really know why you're here.
I'm trying very hard to provide some sort of moral center to the podcast, but
I'm
it's
just saying
not
they need to
going
learn
well.
they need to learn to be afraid of us. Like,
I'm
really
I'm
afraid.
still too unhappy about Obliviate. I don't know why we can't all just. I don't understand.
You can just ask why we can't just all get along.
Yeah, I want to. Wish we all get along like we used to in middle school.
Why don't
No,
we just take all the wizards and put them on an island somewhere in the Pacific Ocean?
and then nuke that? No.
Or Bikini Atoll.
I mean, we haven't even touched on Azkaban and the sheer terror of the fact that they think that's an acceptable way of dealing with prison. And
that
they
does
send
a lot of damage to the human race.
But I'd like to think that most wizards don't agree with that situation either.
Well,
at least
they seem pretty like they don't like the idea of them going to it, but they seem generally okay with the idea of some people going to it.
Yeah, that's fair,
I mean, there wasn't a
Only
mass
Arthur and
protest.
Dumbledore really hate it.
There wasn't a mass protest at Hogwarts when one of their teachers got sent there.
Exactly, and
yeah,
3/4 of the school liked Hagrid.
Exactly. I mean, we went on strike at my school and they turned the water off.
They just have a very adventurous.
I was going to say, I don't know what we'd do if they sent
a
teacher to prison, but they did, and that was good.
Because let's not forget that when, to all intents and purposes, Albus Dumbledore just escapes justice, everyone's like, "Oh yeah, how cool was that? Amazing!"
Yeah,
he ran from the coppers, and we all support
exercising lawful authority to arrest a man accused with evidence of a crime. This crime, in fact, insurgency. They accuse him of running an insurgency. They don't even recognize their own hypocrisy. My overall issue, just to conclude, and then I'll give you both the opportunity to say the same thing, I think comes back to the interactions between the Prime Minister and the Prime Minister and the Minister for Magic. Because there is potential there for that to work as a partnership, as we've identified. But it doesn't, and it's fundamentally because, for some reason or another, wizards do not accept Muggle authority. They just don't, in any way, shape, or form. The only authority they accept is the authority of other wizards.
I can see why you would draw that conclusion. I don't necessarily disagree with it, but I also don't think we ever see any sort of impetus, right? That it's not like the Muggle Prime Minister ever says, well, you know, when all these crises are happening, you know, the bridge collapse and so on, not once does it occur to him like, oh, maybe I should give the wizards a call.
He doesn't. Yeah, I suppose that's true.
But how
doesn't he try to talk to the painting at one point and it ignores him?
No, he tries to have the painting removed.
Oh, right, fair enough. The opposite.
If you think about how many things happen in a country, the Prime Minister can't be expected to every time ask a painting that doesn't react to him in any way.
No, of course.
It's easier for it to go the other way.
Of course, but when a Prime Minister has a self-professed awful week where many, many different tragedies happen, you think maybe it's got something to do with these mysterious dudes who came up and turned my, like, thing into a gerbil. I forget what it is, but...
Teacup.
You know... Yeah, teacup, exactly. I don't know. I think the Muggles are a little bit guilty of just being ignorant. They're sort of... Ignorance is bliss. That's kind of what they're thinking.
No, see, I agree with that.
I think that's a necessary survival instinct, though.
No, see, I agree with that in the sense that we've sort of floated the idea that maybe there are pre-existing sort of agreements between the Muggles and wizards about kind of expected behaviours. And my point is that if those agreements do exist, which I'm not sure, but whatever, if those agreements do exist, they are clearly not sufficient. And we need a way of forcing the wizards back to the table to have new negotiations and saying you are absolutely categorically not allowed to obliviate us anymore, otherwise we'll cut your thumbs off.
Muggles live in ignorance. Muggles live in ignorance because stick beats gun every time.
Absolutely not. And I will fight you on that. Physically.
Well, I very much hope that we can get you back on an episode to fight me on this.
No, thanks for coming, Ellie.
Very much so. It was a pleasure to meet you.
It was nice meeting you lot. I say that like I've never met Sean before, and I have just been stalking you both.
Yeah, we were literally at a barbecue on Sunday, but whatever.
It's in something you've tried to forget that you knew Sean. I understand the feeling.
He did soundly reject my suggestion of a good place to go for pork pies and told me it was useless knowledge. So there is that. I do still remember that, Sean. I am still cross.
Well, now that's
When
a
did
hot
I do
take.
this?
I suggested if you went near Pocklington, they do really good pork pies there, and you told me I need to know less useless knowledge.
Well, it was more because I was talking about where I wanted to live.
And I'm saying if you
And
live
they've
near
got good
there,
pork pies in Pocklington, I'm afraid isn't going to be a determining factor on that.
they're really good pork pies.
Sure,
Like,
I can
really?
get them off the internet. But anyway.
I think you're being too harsh there, Sean. That sounds like a great reason to move somewhere.
Oh, shut up.
What I'm saying is I'm going to bring those pork pies to the next barbecue, and I'm not going to bring enough for you, and you're going to be really sorry.
Well, on that bombshell.
I need to sum up, but I'm chuckling too much. Thanks for listening to this episode of Expertise is Overrated. No doubt we've said some things that were either objectively wrong or downright offensive. As ever, feel free to let us know. Rate the podcast and leave us a comment, or drop us an email at expertiseisoverrated@gmail.com, tweet us at @zeroexpertise, check out our website, expertiseisoverrated.podbean.com, or come join us in our Discord server.
If you're lucky, we might just argue with you in one of our upcoming episodes. If you're really lucky, we might call you an idiot. In our next episode, we're ranking the best warriors in George R.R.R. Martin's A Song of Ice and Fire series. Join us then for more nonsense.